Welcome to Milan Recording Studios. My name is James Pavel Shockhart, and in today's video, as you can see, I have 4 digital pianos. Now, in this video, I'm not going to be doing a sound comparison of them. In fact, I won't be playing them at all, so if that's the sort of video you're looking for, unfortunately, this video won't do that for you. But what I am going to be comparing is actually the weight and feel of the actions of these 4 digital pianos. This is the Yamaha P125, this is the Kawai ES110, this is the Roland FP-30, and this is the Casio PX-S3000. So what I'm going to be doing is using these graduated gram weights to measure and test the weights of the downweight specifically of all 4 of these digital pianos, and also give you guys my thoughts and opinions on how the actions of all 4 of these feel, and also kind of how they would compare to a real grand piano, and also how they compare to each other. First off, I want to do a little bit of explaining, and I want to thank you guys for giving me the idea to make this video. This sort of a topic was a special request that was done, I believe it was on the video I did of the Casio. I did a video where I measured the action weight of the Casio and gave you guys my opinions of it, and that was a rather controversial topic, and in that video, several people asked, well, how do other digital pianos stack up? So I decided to bring in the other 3 digital pianos I have within the same price bracket that are under $1,000 here at Milan Recording Studios, and we'll be measuring them all together. For a little bit of a backstory and a little bit of an information on what this thing is here in my hands, as I said, it's called graduated gram weights. And this is a device used by piano technicians to measure the weight of an acoustic piano when they're regulating it. The idea behind this, the way you can use this, well, there's 2 different ways, but what we're going to be focusing on today is the down weight. So on a grand piano and also on an upright piano, basically, when you set this weight down on the key, if you're going to be regulating it or weighing the weight of the key, what you're going to want to do is set this weight on the key, and what you should optimally see when you put the weight on the key is you want the key to slowly go down, as slow as possible, nice and smoothly, towards the bottom of the key, where it should come to a stop, not at the very bottom of the key bed, but at the let-off point. There's a little kind of a bump in the key as you push it down on an acoustic piano, and that's known as the let-off or the escapement, and it's part of the action mechanisms rubbing against each other inside of the piano. So what you want to see is that key slowly lower down towards where the let-off is and come to a stop right at that bump. On an acoustic piano, you can then push the key down a little bit farther, and then you'll feel a little bump, and that will be the bottom of the key bed. But you only want the weights to travel down to the point of where the let-off is. Because these are digital pianos, they don't quite work in the same way, and in fact, 3 of them don't even have a true imitation of the feel of let-off. So they kind of behave a little bit differently, and it's very difficult to get them to slowly go down, so they will kind of swing down a little bit faster than you would optimally want to see in an acoustic piano. I've done my best, and I've taken about an hour off camera to carefully measure the weight of the keys right around in middle C. That's the zone we're going to be focusing on today, and I've tried to find the absolute minimum amount of weight that it takes to measure these keys. So first of all, let's start off here with the Yamaha P125. It's the first digital piano in this price bracket that I featured on my channel, and I found that within the range of middle C, the keys tend to have a weight of 54 grams. So let me pull out my graduated gram weights here and set up a weight of 54. Now, the reason I'm saying focusing around this middle register is because all 4 of these digital pianos have what is known as a graduated action. In a real acoustic piano, the hammers in the bass end are much bigger than the hammers in the treble, which are really small, and so as a result, the action on even the world's finest pianos will be heavier in the bass and lighter in the treble. All 4 of these digital pianos attempts to replicate this by having the bass keys be heavier than the light keys, and as a result, if I plop a weight down on the bass, it will work differently than if I plop the same weight up here in the treble. So I'm only going to be focusing on the weights of the middle register, which is the most commonly played register. I may discuss the higher and lower registers, but that's not going to be the main focus of today's weight video. One thing I learned, one of my friends told me, is that this set of graduated gram weights actually has, it's accurate, the weights include the weight of this little nut here on top, so I have to put that back on every time I weigh. So here is 54 grams on the P125, and as you can see there, it moves the key as I set it down. That's about as slow as I can really get it to go. But one thing you may notice is that the key actually doesn't go down very far. And this is an odd phenomenon here with the P125 that I found that the let-off is kind of simulated a bit weirdly on the P125. It basically, as you push the key down on all 4 of these, you will find that the key will progressively get heavier as you're pushing the key down. But Yamaha's gets really heavy, or not really heavy, but it gets heavier very close to the top of the key travel, and then as you go down, it's a lot heavier. So I could, for example, put all the weights back on here, right? Put all the weights back on here, and then what you'd see is you'd have the key swing down a lot farther, and then the distance it would be floating above the very bottom of the key bed would be a lot more similar to what you would find on an acoustic piano's actual let-off. But this instrument has no let-off, and as a result, it appears that Yamaha's simulated spring-powered let-off kind of a feeling is very high up in the key, which gives this a weight of 54. I could, again, put all 63 grams of weight on here and say that's the actual weight, but I think 54 is a bit more accurate because I think Yamaha's simulation of let-off is just a bit too high up in the key. But as a result, the action actually has a pretty light feel. 54 grams is quite light. The controllability and the feel of the Yamaha P125 is really great. Again, it is light, so it doesn't feel like your average grand piano. Those typically tend to be a bit heavier in the 60 to 70 gram weights, from my experience. But this has a much lighter feel than a typical grand piano, but it's also quite responsive, and it really does just about everything that you'd want it to do. Just as a little example here to demonstrate the graduated keys here, if I put it on the lowest key, you'll see that it moves very, very slowly downwards. I knew that would happen. Expect that to happen a lot in this video. And then if I put it up here, you'll see that it goes down a bit faster. And if I put it up here, it actually, I think, seems to be going down faster still. So this is very, very subtly graduated for the keys. The left-hand keys, the bass-side keys, are very, very slightly, maybe a gram or 2 heavier than the keys up here at the very top of the key bed. Overall, the Yamaha P125 has a great action and would be a perfect digital piano for a beginning to intermediate piano student. The Kawai ES110 is actually one of the more recent acquirees here at Milan Recording Studios. I just got it in a few days ago, and I've basically fallen in love with it. It's a really fantastic digital piano that has a really wonderful action, a very nice piano sound, and overall is really, really fantastic. The action on this digital piano is basically around the same as the P125. If I put our 54 gram weights on here, you will see that it does go down. I've found that 55, if I add the 1 gram weight on there, 55 tends to be a little bit more consistent over the general area of the key, but as you can see, 54 might also basically be good for the Kawai ES110. So let me just take the 54 off. I have 55 written down on my piece of paper, but I think 54 also works good on the ES110. Now here you can see the difference, that even though the weight of the action on both of these digital pianos is basically the same, it takes the amount of down weight that's basically the same to go from the top of the key to where their let off is. Again, I'm saying let off in quotes because there is no actual bump, it's just like a graduated spring. But as you can see here, the distance from where the weight comes to a stop and the actual key bed is much shorter on the Kawai than it is on the Yamaha. You can see that that bobs up and down much farther than it does on the Kawai. And to me, the weights of these actions are basically just about the same. This has a bit of a more springier feel, which, as I mentioned, it literally is springier, but it doesn't feel heavier necessarily. It just feels springier, which can cause the illusion of being a little heavier, but it also isn't actually all that heavy. If I place this at the very bottom, you'll see that it doesn't really move at all. If I nudge it, it goes down a little bit farther, and if I put it up here, it moves much faster. So you can see that this action is in fact graded, and in the middle here, it works well. One thing I have kind of glossed over is the fact that if I put the same weight on the black keys and the white keys, it responds in basically the same way. If I put it on the white keys there, it makes them move, and if I put it on the black keys, it makes them move in the same way. It kind of lowers them to about this far above the key bed, and so then there's still a little bit of give, like you would find in an acoustic piano with the let-off, but it doesn't go all the way down to the key bed. That's not what you want. So it works basically just about the same on both the white keys and the black keys for the ES110, and also the same thing for the P125. Both of them just kind of go down a little bit, and then there's a lot of simulated let-off room there. Now let's move on to the action of the Roland FP-30 here, but actually before I do that, I think I just wanted to tell you guys my opinions of this action because I didn't do that while I did for the P125. The action of the ES110 is actually really lovely, and I think I prefer it just a little smidge more than the action of the P125. There's nothing wrong with this action, but I feel like this one is a little bit more fun to play and gives you even more control over what you're doing. The feel of it, the tactile feedback of the action, honestly feels nothing at all like a piano. When you're playing it, when I'm playing it right now, it feels like a keyboard. It feels like a digital piano. But the strange phenomenon here is, and this is why I was confused in my initial video of the ES110, I was like, I like it, but I don't know if I like it, which is a really weird thing to say. But the reason I was saying that was because it feels like a digital piano, but actually responds when you're playing it like an acoustic piano. It's very, very strange, but it gives you a lot of dynamic control. It's very easy to play pianissimo. It's very, very easy to play fortissimo. It does everything you want it to do wonderfully, but yet the tactile feedback isn't as close to a grand piano as you might find in other digital pianos. Having said that, I do really like the action of the ES110, and I think it's absolutely fantastic. Now let's actually move on to the action of the FP30, which, as I said, this is not the most grand piano-like of all actions, and in this price point, I'd say that the FP30's action probably is the most grand piano-like of any digital piano in this price bracket. There's also the FP10, which uses the same action and is a little bit more affordable too. Having said that, there are a few shortcomings of the FP30 that I've mentioned in the review of it. I won't dive too much into that because that's not what this video is about, but the FP30 does have a very realistic action. As a result, it has the heaviest action of any of the digital pianos here in this category, in this room here with me. It has an action weight of 63 grams, which is a lot. It's very heavy, but that's around kind of like what you'd find in a typical grand piano. If I put all 63 grams here, you'll see that it actually will go down to the let-off. This actually has a let-off, by the way, so it has a nice little bump at the bottom of the key where you can actually feel like there's a little bit of resistance, and then boop, it will drop down to the bottom of the key. That's what these two are simulating with the springs. That's why they get progressively heavier as you go down towards the bottom of the key bed. But this here actually has a physical let-off, and as a result, feels a bit more realistic and a little bit more substantial. It also feels a little bit more clumsy too. I feel like dynamic control isn't as easy on the FP30 as it is with the ES110, oddly enough, but this does feel more like an acoustic piano. So if you're wanting to build up dexterity in your fingers, this wouldn't be a bad option. But as I've mentioned in my review of the FP30, if you're looking for an instrument that's very versatile, that you can use in all sorts of different places, this really wouldn't be your best option. As we can see here, the black keys also respond in the same way. I put the weight on them and they slowly will go down until the very bottom of the key bed. Now these are moving a little bit faster than you would optimally want to see in a grand piano, but if I make these weights any much more lighter, they don't always go all the way down to the very, very bottom of the let-off, to the very bottom, yeah, to the very bottom of the let-off. So that's why I've got all 63 grams in here. Even if I remove like 1 gram or 2 grams, it sometimes will behave a little differently from note to note. If I put 63 grams here on the bottom key, you'll see that the key won't even, well, it did actually move, but it didn't want to move hardly at all. So that indicates here that the bottom keys down here are much heavier than the keys up here, which is what you would find in an acoustic piano. And up here on high C, it actually goes down sometimes to the very bottom of the key bed, just about. On this B, it only goes to the let-off, kind of like halfway through it, but on the high C, it goes all the way down to the key bed, indicating that the keys up here are much lighter, like you'd find in a piano. So the FP30 is probably the closest assimilation to what you would find of an acoustic piano, and overall I do like it. In my initial video I said that this was the best action you'd find in this price bracket, but now that I've played the ES110, I'm kind of torn, because this feels a lot like an acoustic piano, but it sometimes can feel a little bit clumsy, and notes can come a little bit louder or a little bit softer than you wanted them to. The ES110 doesn't sound like, it doesn't feel like a piano really at all, but it responds a lot like a high-class piano would. So that's kind of an interesting phenomenon. Kind of between these two, I'd say, would be the best action. It just depends what you're looking for. If you're looking for something very light that gives you a lot of control, the ES110 or the P125 would do you really good. If you're looking for something that's heavy and really simulates the feel of an acoustic piano, the FP30 would be your option. It does have a nice, substantial, very realistic feel, and also, interesting to note, it's the quietest of all of the actions here. If I play a chord up here on the Casio, which I haven't even mentioned yet, you can hear the kind of clicky-clacky noise it makes. If I play the same sort of thing on the FP30, you can hear some noise. Also, my fingernails are a little bit long here, so you can hear those too. But if I try to avoid doing that, you can hear that the FP30 makes a more dull thumping sound, whereas the Casio has like a higher pitched clacking sound. The P125 is probably a little bit similar to the FP30, but it seems to make a little bit more noise when the keys are coming up, and the ES110 is probably the noisiest of all of the actions. The reason I'm mentioning this is because a lot of people will buy a digital piano for their home for them to plug headphones in and practice quietly without bothering the other members of the household. So a noisy action or a quiet action would also be a benefit for you as well. So the FP30 has a very quiet action. So if that's why you're looking for for a digital piano, this would also be a decent contender. Now let's move on to the Casio PX-S3000. This was the instrument that kind of founded this whole video series. The reason I did this was because in my original review of the PX-S3000, I discovered that the black keys were radically lighter than the white keys, a very, very strange thing. In the follow-up video to that I did, where I showed everybody that the black keys were lighter than the white keys, I mentioned that the weight of the black keys was 55 grams. What I've been finding lately is actually a little bit different. It's actually not 55 grams, it's actually even lighter than that. And the reason for that is because, first of all, when I did that follow-up video, I just really wanted to get it done fast and get that information out there to prove to everybody that the black keys were lighter. And also because, as I mentioned earlier, my friend of mine told me after I made that video that these weights are calculated to include the weight of this nut. So even though I don't need the nut on here to hold the weights on, it's designed to work with them. So now, after a bit more research and calculation, I found the weight of the black keys to be 43 grams and not 55. So that's very, very light. That's the lightest keys on all of our spectrum here. So if I put this weight here on the black keys, you can see that actually they respond a lot like what you'd want to see in an acoustic piano. The keys will slowly go down until they hit the let-off point. Again, there's no actual let-off on this instrument, but you can see here that the key will, especially on this C sharp, the key will slowly go down to the let-off point and then stop. However, if I put 43 grams on the white key, nothing happens. If I put it on this white key, nothing happens. And this white key, nothing happens. So as you can see, the black keys are distinctly lighter than the white keys. So what does this mean? Well, it means that playing the Casio PX-S3000 is nothing at all like playing an acoustic piano or any of these other digital pianos as well. As I proved to you here, the Yamaha, the difference between the black and the white keys is basically none. They respond the same way to the weights. Although they respond differently than an acoustic piano would, they don't go down very far, they both respond exactly the same. The Kawai ES110, the black and white keys also respond just about the same. The FP30, the black and white keys respond just about the same to each other. On the PX-S3000, the black keys are distinctly lighter than the white keys, and as a result, they go down much easier than the white keys. So what does it take to actually move the white keys of the PX-S3000? Well, interestingly enough, funny you should ask that, strangely enough, it's actually just about the same as for the Roland, which is odd. The Roland was 63 grams, and from my calculation, the Casio seems to be around 60 grams. So this here is 60 grams. As you can see, it does just what we want it to do. It goes down. I could maybe decrease that a little bit, but this C here is heavier than this D, and this is another issue that I found with it that I didn't even notice beforehand because it's pretty subtle. All of these other digital pianos, my voice is weird today, sorry about that, guys, but all of these digital pianos have had a very nicely consistent graded feel. The bass keys have been heavier and more substantial. The mid-range keys have slowly graduated into being a little bit lighter, and then they slowly graduate into being lighter still. Same with the ES110, same with the P125, although very, very subtly on the P125. I'm not even positive, but it does seem to respond slightly different with the P125. On the Casio, it is graded. If I put these 60 grams on the white key down here, you'll see that it doesn't even move. If I put the 60 grams up here, you'll see that it in fact does move quite quickly. However, what's weird is that the graduation point is actually like at this middle C. Beyond this middle C, the notes seem to get substantially heavier, and above this middle C, at this D, the notes are lighter. So as you can see here, this D goes down a little bit faster than this C does. This C goes down really slowly. That's kind of like what you'd want to see, although it's not even going all the way down to the let-off point. This D here moves a bit faster, but it also moves down much closer to the distance that the actual let-off of a real piano would be. So that's kind of an odd thing. Not a huge thing. I didn't notice that when I was playing it, but it is something interesting that the weights kind of reveal. And as we move on down here, you'll see that the action gets heavier and heavier. And interestingly, this C down here hardly wants to move at all, but this D is much happier to move. So again, down here, we're seeing a big difference with how the action works from note to note, and then beyond this C, keys hardly want to move at all. For the black keys, let me pull out our 43 gram weights. Again, I think we've got 32 and then plus the 8 plus the 4 gram weight here. For the 43 gram black keys in the middle, if we put the weight on the lowest black key, you'll see that it doesn't really want to move. And if I put it on the highest black key, you'll see that it happily does move. This is, again, with 43 grams. So as you can see here, these black keys also are graduated, but let's see where that point is. There we go, right there. That low E flat happily moves. That one doesn't really. So there's another kind of a sudden shift here with the sound, not the sound, but the feel of these. These black keys here go down nice and slow. Oh, that one's a little stiff. Why is that one stiff? Sometimes they... All right, there we go. Oh, this one's a little bit stiffer, actually. Oddly enough, that one's a little bit inconsistent. But then as we keep going down here, you'll see that this low D flat wants to go nice and easy. There we go. Now it doesn't. So interesting that there's kind of like sudden shifts in the Casio. Not a huge issue. I actually do kind of like how the white keys feel. The white keys by themselves feel all right. They'd be fine for practicing on. The black keys by themselves are a little bit too light, but they also feel okay by themselves. But when you combine the fact that the white keys are heavier and the black keys are lighter, it makes playing the PX-S3000 very difficult. And as a result, I can't really recommend the PX-S3000 for really anyone. It doesn't really feel that great. All the three of these others, though, they do have their own niche. This is a very accurate representation of what an acoustic piano would feel like. It has that nice, heavy, substantial feel. So if you're after that type of feel, the FP30 would be good for you, but it also has a few features. Go watch my full review of that if you want to know more about those, but it's really only going to be good for use at home. The ES110 and the P125, in my opinion, are probably tied for first place. I feel like I might like the action of the ES110 just a tad bit more, but the Yamaha P125, again, there's really nothing wrong with it, but it does have a more springy kind of a feel to it, as I mentioned at the beginning, so as a result, this one, well, feels springier and has the illusion of having a heavier, more piano-like feel. The ES110, a little bit lighter, but also has a really great dynamic response and is a lot of fun to play. So, I hope you guys have enjoyed this video, and I apologize for the weirdness my voice is doing today. I have no clue why it is acting like that, but it's being really weird today. But I do hope that you guys have enjoyed this video of these 4 digital pianos and kind of seeing the differences and the similarities between the actions of these 4 digital pianos. The Kawai and the Yamaha have a very similar kind of an idea of what a digital piano action should feel like. The same exact weight, slightly different approach from both of them as to how to achieve that weight, and Yamaha has created the illusion of making it feel a little bit more heavy, whereas the Kawai one feels lighter and also has a great dynamic response. The Roland FP-30, really nice and heavy, very substantial, but a little bit clumsy and also missing some of the great features. And the PX-S3000 is kind of an epic fail and really doesn't feel like a piano or a digital piano at all when you're playing it. It makes playing it very difficult. To get timing nice and consistent here with the black keys being so much lighter is virtually impossible. Once again, I hope you guys have enjoyed this video, and if you did, you might want to go check out my channel. Like I mentioned earlier, I have individual reviews of all 4 of these digital pianos, the FP30, the ES110, the P125, and the PX-S3000. I've got 2 different videos of that, actually, possibly more. And also, if any of you guys want to see a combo, a comparison between any 4 of these, let me know and I will be able to do it. So if you guys want to see how the Yamaha compares against the Roland, or how the Casio compares to the Roland in both action and also sound, user interface experience, build quality, attachments, all that kind of stuff, a full legit review of any two combination of these, do let me know and I will do that in the future. Hopefully you guys enjoyed this video. Again, if you did, might want to go check out my channel. If you want to subscribe, thank you very much, and I'll see you in the next video. Goodbye.